All right, so now that we kind of get a sense of the importance of law and why Aquinas is so preoccupied with it, well, and medievals in general, let's look more deeply at this section that we're looking at, so questions 90 through 96. And if we go to, here's our deal, question 90, the essence of law. Here's our 4 articles. Is law something pertaining to reason? The end of law, its cause, promulgation. And if we go back here, here are the 4 articles. Does law belong to reason? Is it ordained for common good? Any person's reason competent to make laws? Promulgation essential. Okay, so let's go back and tackle these one by one. So, is the law something pertaining to reason? I mean, we already, it's not going to be a shocker. We already kind of know. The answer is yes, it is pertaining to reason. Remember how to read these suckers. So we're going to skip through the objections, right? And then the contrary is where he gives his ultimate thesis. It belongs to the law to command and forbid. It belongs to reason to command as stated above. Therefore, law is something pertaining to reason. Simple. That goes back to tripartite soul. Reason is what, being human is all about. So here's his understanding of how to make sense out of all that. Whoopsie daisy. I answer that. Law is a rule and measure of acts whereby man is induced to act or is restrained from acting. Simple enough, right? So in other words, what? Reason is, you can go back to Aristotle on this, right? Remember excess and deficiency and all that kind of stuff? So it's reason that is one, chooses what we should do, right? So reason is supposed to rise above appetites and emotions, right? So it tells us our end. So, if I'm hungry and I'm a dog, then yeah, I'm going to just walk into the store and start eating things, right? Whereas as a human being, I'm not going to do that necessarily, right? I can control myself. I'm I eat here and there, whatever. For lex, law, is derived from legere, to bind, because it binds one to act, right? So obligation. Now, the rule and measure of human acts is reason, which is the first principle of human acts. We've beaten that dead horse to death, as is evident from what has been stated above. Since it belongs to reason to direct to that end, which is the first principle in all manners of action, as the philosopher says. When he says the philosopher, he's literally referring to Aristotle. Now, that which is the principle of any genus is the rule and measure of that genus. For instance, unity in the genus of numbers and the first movement in the genus of movements. Consequently, it follows that law is something pertaining to reason. Don't worry so much about the genus stuff. All he's saying is he's talking about definitions, right? Taxonomy of living things. Do you remember that? That too, by the way, goes back to Aristotle, where when you're, in grade school, you talked about, species, genus, family, all that stuff, right? That's all he's talking about. Okay. So since the first principle of the family of things we call human is reason, therefore, underneath everything else is reason. So that's all it means. Again, not a shocker, right? So we could go back to our list here and we'll be question 91. Where's my thing? There we go. Does law belong to reason? Yes. All right, let us move on. Whoops. All right, so now let's go to the end of law. Now, when he says the end of law, don't think of, where it stops. When he says end, in other words, the goal, the direction, what is the point of it? Where is it going? So let's just skip to the I answer that. Laws are enacted for no private profit, but for the common benefit of citizens. Right? So in other words, what are we after here? I mean, can you make laws just for your own self? And the answer is no. You can make rules for yourself, I suppose. And I guess analogously, you could say, for instance, that you put laws for your family or something. However, human beings operate in societies. Therefore, when we're talking about universality, right, we're talking about all people, hence common is important, right? It's got to be for all of us, not just for some of us. And that's what he's about to talk about here. If I can, whatever. Man, I'm trying to highlight this. There we go. I answer that, as stated above, the law belongs to that which is a principle of human acts. Bam, reason. Now, as reason is a principle of human acts, so in reason itself there is something which is the principle in respect of all the rest. Wherefore, to this principle, chiefly and mainly, law needs to be referred. He's just restating number 1. Now, the first principle in practical matters, which are the object of practical reason, is the last end. And the last end of human life is bliss or happiness, as stated above. Notice he's got a distinction here between practical and last end. Again, think back to Aristotle. Do you remember when we said in Aristotle some things are for the sake of other things? That's what we mean by practical, right? So you have a practical end of, I don't know what, you know, you're going to watch this video so that you can do well in this unit, right? Okay, that's a practical thing. So your mind says to yourself, okay, so in order to do well in the unit, I got to do this and this. Okay, boom, and you see the stages there, right, to the end. However, the whole point of human life is, as he says, blessedness in the afterlife, right? Okay. Moreover, since every part is ordained to the whole as imperfect to perfect, and since one man is part of the perfect community, the law needs regard properly the relationship to universal happiness. Wherefore the philosopher, Aristotle, in the above definition of legal matters mentions both happiness and the body politic, for he says in Nicomachean Ethics that we call those legal matters just which are adapted to produce and preserve happiness in its parts for the body politics. And since the state is a perfect community, as he says in the politics. So the point of the matter is, right, law is about universality. And we are completed, at least in this earthly level, we'll get to, something higher in a bit, in bodies politic is what they mean. In other words, communities, right? Think communities. Because that's how we survive, right? That's human nature is to form societies. Ergo, law must be about the common good. Because if it's only for the particular good, then it's not even law. Remember, law was to lay things down, right? So law is by its inherent essence universal. Hence, it must be for the universal or common good. Okay, so let us move on then, folks. Okay, whether the reason of any man is competent to make laws. So here's the shtick, right? We all have reason. Laws are of reason. So, can any of us just have at prescribing laws? That's what's on the table. He says, I answer that, on the contrary, a law is an ordinance of the people whereby something is sanctioned by the elders together with the commonality. Okay. By elders, just think people in charge, wise people. Commonality, the rest of us. I answer that a law, properly speaking, regards first and foremost the order of the common good, which we just talked about last time, right? Now, to order anything to the common good belongs either to the whole people or to someone who is the vice-regent of the whole people. And therefore, the making of a law belongs either to the whole people or to a public person who has care of the whole people, since in all other matters, the directing of anything to the end concerns him to whom the end belongs. So, again, it's kind of like legalese, right? It's a little verbose. All he's saying is this: since law is for the common good, the common people have to decide. Now, it can't always be the common people, but it can be the people who are in charge of the common people, right? So in other words, if you got everyone in the whole city together to, come up with a law, yeah, we could vote, right, or something like that. But there's going to need to be representatives to, put the possibilities on the table and, organize things for us. That's what he means by vice regents. But those vice regents are always looking for the common good. Why? Think about this. Because if law is not for the common good, but is for the good of a minority or an individual, then it's not law. Now, power might make us have to follow it, i.e. a tyrant who makes laws only for him or herself, right? But then those are not laws. Those are rules, and there's a difference between them. So yeah, in other words, can anybody make laws? Well, as long as they have the backing and support of the common people, because the laws are for the common good, right? Okay, and let's look at our last one here, number 4. Oh, this one's easy. Promulgation of the law. Promulgation simply means, does it need to be like stated or publicized? And obviously, yeah, right? So I answer that. A law is imposed on others by way of rule and measure. Now, a rule or measure is imposed by being applied to those who are to be ruled and measured by it. Wherefore, in order that a law obtain the binding force which is proper to a law, it needs to be applied to the men who have been ruled by it. Such application is made by being notified by promulgation. Pretty simple. So yeah, obviously, if you're going to pass laws for the common good, they need to be written down so people are aware of them. So, Article 1, the essence of law, it's rational, it's for the common good, somehow the common people need to be at least involved, at least through the representatives, and you have to spell it out. So that's what we get out of question 90.